two things that will make that almost impossible. There's culture, there's religion. And I don't know if any African leader will try that. But to me, the most potent instrument of population management, population control is education, particularly girl-child education.
Let me make it as personal as possible, if you don't mind. I mean, how many children have you fathered?
Oh, I have done better than what my children are doing.
Well, give me a straight answer. How many children have you fathered?
Well, in my part of the world, I will give
this
you...
is exactly... I mean, can you give me the answer?
I will give you the answer, but in my part of the world, normally we don't count children.
No, but I
when
would
we
like
say,
you to count for
and
me.
If I go by that culture, I will say many.
Well, let me try and help you. I think the answer is 20 or more.
Yes.
So, let me be blunt.
Yes.
You are part of the problem. If you were a young man today, would you accept that you could not live the life with the tradition and custom that you lived with in your 20s, 30s and 40s? Do you accept that things have to fundamentally change?
I tell my children that don't go my way. But I will also tell them, and I will tell you that maybe I was lucky because all my children were educated, all of them.
Well, you're lucky because you're a member of an elite.
Yeah, I have.
But do you think you were selfish?
No. I said I made a mistake. I will admit that. And I tell my children, don't make the mistake that I made.
One of the key elements of it is that so many of Africa's people in 2050 are going to be young and they're going to be looking for jobs. I mean, tens and tens of millions of new job entrants into the marketplace every year in Africa, and the jobs simply aren't there.
Jobs are not there. But even before you get to jobs, you have to educate them. You have to provide health care service for them. You have to provide housing for them. You have to provide skills for them. Now, all those you have to do before you even get them to the point that they will have to look for a job. How do you handle all that? And that is the problem. Then, of course, the job.
It's going to, it seems to me, put an unbearable strain on governments across your continent. You say this in the book that you've written, co-written, Making Africa Work, which addresses the whole demographic problem. You say, unlike other problems in Africa, which may be connected with tribe or religion, this youth explosion, it will not be a localized challenge. It will cut across all religions, tribes, ethnic areas. It'll cut across geographical areas. It will be, you say, a mess.
A mess and a bomb. I say we are all sitting on a time bomb.
But what kind of credibility do you have demanding of African governments that they take seriously the need for structural reform and political reform and clean governance, which is sort of the message you're giving? What credibility do you have when you were a two-time president in Nigeria and you signally failed on all of those tests?
No, I did not, Stephen. If anything, I passed all those tests. And listen to me, education. Wait, education. I had, when I came in as military head of state, I started UPE, 6 years of primary education. And when I left, it was abandoned. When I came back as elected president, I even did better. I started UBE, Universal Basic Education. That was 9 years of education, 6 in primary and 3 in what we call junior secondary. Now, some state went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the federal government has no business in primary education. Now, I have to obey that.
Well, if I may say, you may choose your arenas to discuss your record very carefully, but I'm looking at something you said in May 2005, after you'd had 6 years in power, you said this government is going to diversify the productive base of our economy away from oil. We are going to foster a market-oriented private sector. We're going to drive an economy with high levels of participation. Truth is, none of that happened.
No.
When you left office, Nigeria was as reliant on oil as it had been before you started.
Now, Stephen, what you have read is correct, but what has been the result, you have not read. What was the result? When we came in, and we give you a few examples, cocoa production in Nigeria was 150,000 metric tons. By the time I left, it was 400,000 metric tons.
You know what?
Yeah,
well, you can quibble about the figures, but basically 90% of Nigeria's foreign revenues and 2/3 of its entire national revenues came from the oil industry after you left office, just as they did pretty much before you came to office. Structural reform is difficult in Africa, and you didn't achieve it in Nigeria. Look at your record on energy production. Look at your record on infrastructure, roads built, railways delivered. You did not do what you are now insisting Africa's many nation states have to do.
Now, Stephen, have you finished? Now, let me now tell you that you are wrong. I started a railway program. I even started the building. Those who took over from me, a railway program, a 25-year railway program to connect Nigeria. And that plan is what they are following today. But those who took over from me decided that they will not go on with it. And you see, if you build a bridge and somebody comes in and removes the bridge, it's not that you haven't built the bridge, it's that somebody has come and removed the bridge. And you talk about power. When I came into government in 1999, the price of oil hovered around $8 and $9 per barrel. By the time it got to $22 per barrel, we started going into power production, something we started 7. What will have taken us?
You have a great capacity for putting a very rosy tint on your record, but it's not me accusing you. If I may, Mr. President, it's not me accusing you of failing in your tenure, and I'm only judging you this way because you make so many claims to be a crusader for better governance, clean governance.
Because I did it, and but you are not recalling. You are not dealing with what was done. You are dealing with what
I'm dealing with the way Nigeria perceives you today. When you say it is necessary for Africa's governments to clean up their act today because corruption is corrosive at a time when population is rising so fast, be mindful of what the National Assembly said in November of last year when you lectured them about corruption. Do you want me to read it?
Read what they say.
Lest we forget, they said, the person who introduced corruption to this National Assembly is Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. He birthed the Fourth Republic National Assembly with corrupt practices from day one of his administration.
What they say, is it right or they are talking rubbish? Listen to me. When I took over, the first thing that the National Assembly sent to me, and they sent who was my national security advisor, is that whenever I'm sending a bill to them, I should send it with money. And I said no. If I send a bill to them and they don't pass it, I will still run the affairs of Nigeria.
Have you forgotten the sacks of money that were displayed on the floor of the House of Representatives?
Where did it come from?
Being used for bribes.
Where did it come from?
Well, you tell me.
Now you should ask the man who brought it on the table.
He says you, and I'm quoting him directly, are the grandfather of corruption in Nigeria.
I never gave anybody a dime. Never.
Why is it that so many Nigerians do not believe you?
Now many Nigerians believe me. I wrote the EFCC. Investigated,
the anti-corruption watchdog,
investigated me thoroughly and came out with a report. that completely absolved me of corruption. Completely.
The grandfather of corruption. The words of the National Assembly. Because I know, you know why?
Yes.
Because they're fed up with you lecturing them.
No.
You claim they are corrupt today.
I will keep on lecturing them, including you, who do not go for what the result is. Now I told you, the institution that I set up did not even say its report when I was there. It did its report, it waited until I left, and then submitted the report to my successor.
Let me put
my successor then send a copy of the report to me.
See, let's not just stay on the personal, because you are going to defend your record, and I'm telling you many Nigerians don't like your record, but let's park that argument for a second.
You particularly don't like what is positive.
I am simply quoting the words of influential Nigerians. Let us not get hung up on that, because this is
we are not hanging up on that.
Good.
We must get it right. Now, because you are not getting it right.
Well, so you say. So you say.
So yes. And if you can agree that you are not getting it right, let us get it right.
I'm going to ask you a somewhat different question.
Okay, you ask me.
You say, you say that across Africa, meeting this challenge of the demographic time bomb can only happen if governance is improved. Now, do you believe democracy, genuine democracy, is the way to improve?
What is genuine democracy? Stephen, what is genuine democracy? There are no two democracies in the world that are the same.
Well, for example, you personally, although this book says democracy, accountability, transparency are vitally important, you personally have praised many times President Kagame in Rwanda and Prime Minister Haile Mariam in Ethiopia. You say they are shining examples of the way Africa can meet the future challenge. Neither of them, I think it is fair to say, are seen by independent analysts as running genuine democracy.
What is genuine democracy?
Well, you tell me, is Rwanda a democracy in your view?
Rwanda is not undemocratic. In my view.
Is not undemocratic.
In my view.
You think that opposition is given full freedom of expression? You think people
have
a right to a free press in Rwanda?
I don't know what opposition is given or not given. But to my own mind, Rwanda is not undemocratic. And neither is Ethiopia undemocratic.
Zimbabwe? You went to Zimbabwe, monitored their election, and said there was no problem.
I did not say there was no problem.
2013, you said...
I said, from what I saw, the result reflect the will, the desire, and the feeling of majority of people of Zimbabwe.
Well, Robert Mugabe is in his 90s.
Yes.
The man you supported for President of Nigeria, Mr. Buhari, is in his 70s. He's been very ill. In fact, for more than 100 days, he wasn't able to live in Nigeria. He had to be in London in hospital. One can look at other people I've interviewed over the years, like Teodoro Obiang in Equatorial Guinea, the longest-serving leader in Africa at over, I think, 37 years. Africa needs to match this population growth with a new generation of younger leaders, doesn't it?
They are coming. They are coming up. You have a younger leader in Togo. You have a younger leader in Gabon. You have a younger leader in Tanzania. You have a younger leader in Zambia. Younger leaders are coming. They will not come overnight. You even have a younger leader in Senegal. They are coming. You have a younger leader in Burkina Faso. They are coming. You have a younger leader in Tunisia. They are coming.
You, throughout this interview, have consistently tried to be extraordinarily positive, despite opening up with this statement about the ticking bomb of population growth. But let me put to you something that actually is in the book.
I am an optimist by nature.
Let me quote to you your own book.
Yes.
Quote, those who depend on the old order, and we've just talked about all of these leaders who represent the old order, the old crony elites. Hang on, those who depend on the old order can immediately see that the writing is now on the wall, and they, the old order, will fight viciously to defend the status quo. That's a quote from the book. It doesn't sound quite so optimistic there, does it?
That's optimistic.
That's optimistic? A vicious fight to defend the status quo?
The old order is disappearing. Only recently, Dos Santos, who have been there for 30 years, decided to bow out. And what I'm saying is that those old orders that have not decided to bow out, they will be left behind. Now, if you do not leave power, power will leave you. And that's what will happen to them. Do you realize that? And that's what we are saying. That if anybody has decided to die in office, leave him. He will die. And then he won't carry the office away.
But as this process unfolds, many African people are living in poverty. Many have a dream to get out of their nation, even their continent.